Hello, this is a demo of the ASC White Point plugin for Grand MA3 that I developed recently. The purpose of this plugin is to provide you with a set of tools to manipulate white light when working in CIE XY. There are numerous lighting crews today that have either made the switch to using lights in an XY profile or are thinking about doing so. And if you've ever tried to program lights in an XY profile, I'm sure you've realized that most lighting consoles, including MA3, are not very well equipped for working in XY. Sure, you may have a color picker and XY sliders, and even here in MA3 you have a reference line for the Planckian locus, but you really have no control over what your color temperature and tint are. So the best workaround so far has been to grab a color meter and a light and spend time recording a bunch of color presets for every desired color temperature you wish to use. But this plugin aims to simplify working in XY while maintaining accurate color. First off, a little background info. A few months ago, Tim Kang, an ASC associate, published a table of CIE XY coordinates for a wide range of color temperatures and a handful of tint offsets. This resulted in just over 2,000 known XY coordinates that we can utilize. I then took that chart and expanded it to include entries for every even 100 Kelvin and every eighth tint from full minus to full plus green. This expanded chart now includes over 4,600 known XY coordinates. This reference data has been condensed down into a LUT and embedded into the plugin itself. So now let's talk about using the plugin within MA3. Once imported, you never actually run the plugin itself, and in fact clicking on it will do nothing. Instead, you interact with the plugin by using a collection of 7 basic macros. Each macro is simply one line that calls the plugin by name and runs a specific function within it. Here in this show file, I've got a Felix Q3 in mode 14, which is a 16-bit XY profile. If I wish to give it a specific color temperature, I can click on the Input CCT macro. It will then ask me for a desired color temperature and tint expressed in a percentage, with negative 100 being full minus green and positive 100 being full plus green. I can enter 3200, leave the tint at 0, and hit please again to apply that color to the light. Simple as that. This input macro also accepts 2-digit entries. For example, I can just type 56 to reach 5600 Kelvin, and maybe we'll add half plus green this time. From there, I can adjust the temperature in 100 Kelvin increments by clicking either of these macros to warm or cool the color of the light. And I can use these macros to adjust the tint up and down as needed as well. And that tint level will be maintained while adjusting the color temperature. At any point in time, I can find out where I am by clicking the What's My CCT macro. This pops up a dialog box which shows me what my current color temperature is, any tint that might be applied, what my current XY values are, and how close it is to the nearest known LUT coordinate. Here you can see that the two coordinates are identical, and that's because I've been using the macros to move me across known LUT coordinates. On the other hand, if I use the color picker to pick a random color, I can find out where I am and find out how close I am to a known coordinate. And due to the density of the LUT table, the difference here should be imperceptible. And finally, I have one more macro to neutral out the tint and bring you back to the Planckian locus. And that's about all there is to using this plugin. I do still think it's good practice to record your own set of color presets like we've done here. If you need to look at the color of a light stored in a queue or something, it's much easier when it shows the name of your preset right there in the programmer, rather than having to recall the XY data and use the macro to ask where you are. And before I go, I want to point out a few important notes about this plugin. Number 1, you may notice a Kino Flo fixture shown here, and it's for good reason. This plugin assumes that the XY range of your fixtures goes from 0 to 0.8, and nearly every light manufacturer conforms to this standard, except for Kino Flo. For whatever reason, Kino's lights that have XY profiles, such as the freestyle range of lights, have an XY range of 0 to 0.85. This really messes with the plugin's ability to calculate color temp, and you'll experience weird results when using the plugin. However, this plugin does have a way to deal with these lights. To do so, open up your patch window and find your Kino fixtures. Make sure your columns say full, and then slide over to the tags column. Go ahead and edit this field, and you will need to create your own new tag and call it CIE_extended as shown here. Once that's been created, you can highlight it and then hit assign and close the window. Make sure you assign that tag to all of your Kino Flo lights and then exit your patch. And that's it. Now your Kino Flo lights will work as intended and the macro will work properly. Just remember to add this tag to any new Kinos you might patch in the future, or if you run into some other weird fixtures with a range of 0 to 0.85. Number 2, make sure your encoder bar readout is in either natural or physical mode. Basically anything that shows you the actual XY coordinates of your fixture. If, for example, you happen to be in percent mode, then you're not really working with XY values anymore. And if you try to use one of these macros, it's still going to attempt to enter a decimal value of less than 1, which will probably result in something like a full saturated blue. Not what you want. So I generally keep things in a natural readout, and then the plugin will work as intended. And finally, this plugin is designed for adjusting white light, as shown by the band of coordinates in this graph. If you happen to be in some saturated party color and attempt to adjust the temp or tint, it will snap you back to the nearest known coordinate, which may be far away from your original location. Also, if you happen to be somewhere saturated and ask what your CCT currently is, the plugin will tell you the nearest known coordinate, but will warn you that you are well outside the white band. If you wish to play in saturated colors, I'd recommend just using MA3's built-in virtual faders for hue and saturation. And that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions or suggestions. Thanks.